Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation. So we kind of effectively re-derived electricity and magnetism, why those two things have been related historically. Charge cannot be intuitive, like you cannot conceptualize charge without mass. If you literally try to think about charge, and you're going to be thinking about mass. But charge is not hot, right? Charge is not heat. Charge moving through things causes resistance, and that resistance is then radiated. And so now we have a very good intuitive conceptualization acknowledgement of that, right? If somebody has a bright idea, or if somebody has a light bulb moment, what is that analogy? What is that description really saying? A bright idea, right? You're equating thinking to light. And so whether you spell that with an L-I-T-E or L-I-G-H-T, pretty sure we're going to prove that one way. But you have some sort of resistance. And so then if somebody says, the light at the end of the tunnel, right? They're kind of using this analogy towards, this is a tough time, but things will get better. There's hope, right? There's something in the future that could change. And if someone's a leader, right? If they're a thought leader, or they have bright ideas, you're fundamentally equating the process of thinking to the process of generating light, which fundamentally, physically, is the product of resistance. And so charge is a word that represents this property of mass that can't be reduced anymore. And so we're demonstrating irreducibility. And I'm trying to provide you as much insight as I can through these phase changes that have happened in the past that I personally do not have intuition for, but there is remnants of that logic preserved within the words. But in the same way, if you took the word baseball and you removed the word ball, and somebody just said base, you're not going to conceptualize a baseball. And so if you remove words to a certain level, you no longer have the intuition, but fundamentally, going the other way, the intuition is preserved within these words, but it's not even accessible because it's stabilized. And so charge is a stabilized property, charge is set. And that's why you have measurements with the conservation of mass as well as the conservation of charge. It's one of the same thing. And so then we have Maxwell who says, electricity and magnetism are the same thing. They're not, right? A magnet has a stabilized polarity. And so going from frequency, vibration, the thing, before thing you had ing, that ing, again, mass is what is vibrating. I can literally, let me check real quick. Oh, here's a thing with mass. Does it have vibration on it? Oh, I can turn it on vibrate right now. But its mass is what is vibrating. And then so for these fundamental phase changes, you can't conceptualize things without mass. And so when you think vibration, you can't think of, what is frequency without a system going in a circle, right? It goes around once, 1, 2, 3. And so what is frequency without space? You're not moving through anything. There's no form yet. And so vibration stabilizes the verbiage you use to produce energy, which had the potential for movement, and then that energy stabilizes into mass. That's where you get E equals mc squared. Back to Maxwell. Why is this? Electricity and magnetism are not the same thing, but their magnetism is built on stabilized charge. And so that's where you get polarity. How do you get any sort of cyclicity, any sort of cycle in frequency without space? Like what would that equate to? Just like an amplitude on a string maybe? I don't know, it's not super relevant to what we're doing now. Trying to just develop any intuition around charge. But charge being stabilized, charge creating polarity. You have positive, you have negative. You have this thing, you have not this thing. So you have opposition. That is bounded within after these phase changes. That is what the fundamental stability of two is physically, polarity. And so in that positive, negative, opposites attract, and they attract at such a very, very small level. They form this dynamic. The intuition I have is like circular dynamic, like rotation just becoming really, 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 really tight. And that's why you have different radiation levels, like the different frequencies at which particles radiate, scintillation. And so a magnet is stabilized charge, and that's why you can't physically find a magnetic monopole. It's because it's physically stabilized, right? There's no, in the same way you create higher energy levels for the Large Hadron Collider, you need to smash things together faster. It's based on the magnetic fields you can generate based on mass. And so there's mass limits of the actual universe, and there's no bigger things out there. And so That is why no magnetic monopoles have ever or will ever be measured or encountered, is because the polarity is stabilized through charge. So and that's why electricity and magnetism are related theoretically, is it's really magnetism is stabilized a dynamic of charge. And so I think I've walked you through that as best as I can. But and then again, fundamentally, physically, when you say a bright idea, or he's shining bright, and in like a social movement, like he's a light, right? You're really equating to thinking, to being resistant. And resistance is the fundamental physical principle that produces entropy, right? You have some sort of motion trying to occur, and it's inefficient. That is entropy. You get heat, you get sound. That's how we can talk to each other right now. And so moving on, charging rushes. Sensorality is charging. So now we have all of this. Fundamentally, physically, charge is irreducible. But we use it, and again, if you catch a case, you get charged with a crime. If you charge your cell phone, that's more of a fundamental physical application. Right? What are you doing? Right? You have a battery in your phone, you plug it into the wall, you have a potential difference is really what you have. You stuff a bunch of positive charge on this side of the battery, a bunch of negative charge on this side of the battery, and then later in the day when you want to go to Brazzers.com, or Wall Street Journal, of course, and you click on a button, that energy, that potential difference is dissipated to power your device. And so charging creates potential, and very literally. Sensorality is charging. Charging is accusing. Charging is pursuing. Obviously, legal context. Sensorality is pursuant. Charge does not change, right? Literally, now again, very close but separated, the R and the N, the linguistic structure. We can now assess the geometry of the letters. And obviously, every independent word is different than any other independent word, but it's very similar. But charge does not change. Charge is invariable. It's conserved. Iterating change. Changing variates. Stability is temperature dependent. Right? We have this recombination period. Things were really, really, really hot. And again, conceptually, it doesn't make sense to say that the universe expanded. There was just no form, and then frequency stabilized into energy, and that stabilized into mass. But it was already, quote unquote, out there. But again, there's another one of those things, there's nothing to say. But just the intuition, and we've gone back and forth on the past 2 episodes. A hot, dense state, definitely hot, definitely low entropy. But why would it be hot if they're not close together? And then so it's just kind of like, I guess, the universe is contracting, that's for sure. Things are getting closer. They can't line up exactly because physical systems have not, it's the hexagons, they're not perfect. When you have your lights in your gym and you have those hexagon lights up there and the lines line up, that doesn't actually happen at the atomic level. But it's the closest you can get. And so you have a bunch of magnets getting colder internally, and overall, all temperatures just kind of decreasing and getting closer together, and it's trying to stabilize into its most efficient formations. So it's kind of like stabilizing in as opposed to expanding out. Because I did have some intuition where like, okay, it expanded out and then it came back together. But that just doesn't really make any sense to me. And again, the concept of big, we've already proven what is big in terms of the universe, the things that are out there is just incomprehensible. And so we have limits within our logic and within our language. And so stability is temperature dependent. We have recombination, just the proton can bind to the electron because things are moving around so fast or so energetically. And so that is why, again, this moment of extreme low entropy, and then you have a new internalized property, charge, and then everything has magnetic fields, and they're all pushing, repulsing, and they're trying to settle into the most stable dynamics. And that's what you see in all of astronomy and all of cosmology. But temperature is obviously inversely proportional to stability. The hotter something is, the more it vibrates, the more it jiggles, the more space it wiggles through. And then because of mass, the stability of the electron, again, the electron isn't all, because this fundamental stability of 2, right? All systems are fundamental dynamics. They have more than one component. They have stabilized 2 components. And so we know that definitively, but it doesn't change. That limit produces, a galaxy acting like a point particle is the same thing as an electron acting like a point particle. It's not, but it works plenty fine, and it's not even like intuitively breaking anything. But stabilization, sensorization. So now trying to work the syllability of sen and sor, and again, that's just a form. Like the S's are like iteration placeholders, the Y is generality placeholder, the N and the or are kind of like, again, we're just showing the iteration of logic. Sensorality is ableizing. Sensorality is amazing. Sensorality enables, right? And then there's that en, right? So now we have sen, then we have enables. Able, enable. But now sensorality enables. And so now we have this logical, right? Another huge logical chunk that, again, obviously no one's been even remotely close to articulating, right? Plurality, right? One too many, but then when you put S at the end of a word and it makes it plural, right? Plurality is not really like, I do it intuitively, but it's like, it's not clear, because if we, example, you take sensorality enables, and then you take the S off of enables, which isn't acting as plurality there, but then you move it into the front of the word, and then you got sensorality is senable. But then you're getting it into that form of that E in the end and the iteration of the S's. And so, I guess that's not an example of plurality, but again, plurality in general, like why is S put on the end of a word? What is that functioning linguistically? And then verbs that also end in S, they're not pluralized, but it's like, it's the same letter, it's the same sound, it's the same phonetic, you're doing something logically that we can put around there. That's, if you can hear, that's Waffles in the background. That's another one of our visiting scholars. Actually, Gus, the guy you typically hear, he's a resident scholar. He lives here, and then that's Waffles, the neighbor. But sensorality is senable. That's a direct, again, take the S off of enables and put it in the front. Senable, tenable. Sensorality is sensibility. Sensibility is the ability to sense. Sensibility is sensibility. Sensibility sorates. Sensibility is not senseless. All right, so sensibility would be the ability to sense. So we've again derived sensorality to sensibility, and now we have to, again, some process, again, intuitively, I don't know when we're contracting, expanding, iterating, not iterating, iterating, uniterating. It just all kind of happens at the same time for me. And then, as always, science is independent of me. Anything that I say that is objectively wrong is objectively wrong. Stability secures, right? Cure, secure. Sensorality secures. Now we can see that the SC is the same as sensorality. Sensorality is secure, right? Stability is security. Securitality is sensorality. Security is securitality. Couple natural definitions in there, not logically distinct enough for, I might, again, you can see in the past couple episodes I haven't put much, if anything, on the screen, because I can know you can follow the language and the logic without the letters. So or even generalize past geometric linguistics, which you didn't even know was a subject. That's fun. All things are its. And so ing, the syllable, the letters, the sound, that's the fundamental thing of vibration. You can't break that. But then when you represent that physical thing logically, you use the word it. And so thing, all things are its. And then logically, linguistically, right, it's it apostrophe s versus its. And so that theorem, all things are its is now that plural, like more than one it. And so logically, it apostrophe s is always, the apostrophe is always a contraction to is. It is what it is. Nobody says it's what's it's. Because again, this in legal discourse, you never really see negation with a contraction. And it's just something to this appeal, because, right, speciality, 5 syllables. It is what it is. Yeah, 5 syllables. Had to check real quick. But speciality, special versus special, it's the same syllability, the letters, but then the pronunciation contracts by 1 syllable. So we're showing that contraction because, again, knowledge is sufficiently complete. We're working through all of this iteration of the letters to show you the consistency, literally shape by shape. But we have to, all knowledge is sufficiently complete. And so we just have to iterate the elements we have. It's it apostrophe s is exclusive to it is. Its its is exclusive to possession, right? But Johnny has a gun, it's his. Or, yeah. No, but that would be it is his. If ITS with no apostrophe is possession. And so you don't really have a natural use of ITS as it plural. But we derived that. All things are its. And so these logical explanations probably don't strike you nearly as poignantly as the completion of ordinality, because all I can do is push you up to the boundary of what logic can explain, and then there's no explanation because that's the proof. And people are just like, huh, well, I don't know. But what is ing to is, right? Phonetically, fundamentally, ing vibration is equates to independent systems. The table is over there. And so it gives you this conceptualization of where the table is at. And like is the fundamental relation verb thing. And so ing, all things are related by is. What is to it. It is to thing, as we just said, all things are its. And is just the fundamental verb sound to equation, to equating. Differentiation deviates. Censoring deviates. Deviation diverges. Diverge divulge. Disclosure divulges. Censorship vulges. We did the light bulb moment and bright idea, but thinking and light are resistance. Sensorality is persistent. What is stability to property? Right? Charge is a stabilized property of mass. It's inherent in the same way you can't take away who you are. You can take away an arm, but you're still you. And so you can't save, like, your ability to self-identify is the thing that makes you you. So if you couldn't be you anymore, that would be not you. Point being is all articulation comes from people, organisms, individuals, and you can't break down these things. And so properties are inherent. They can't be removed. And that comes from the physical process of stability. Those two, positive and negative, this thing, not that thing, tightening up, coil, bam. It's physically stabilized to the point where no physical object can interact with it and break that stability. The fundamental stability of two is magnetism. And so, yeah, frequency is to charge, charge is to mass. And so that's the universal progression of properties. Frequency, charge, mass. When was the first cycle? So again, I keep having this intuition of like there should be some frequency without space, right? If I run in a circle and I come back in that circle, bam, bam, I'm establishing a frequency, but it's a distance. And so if you just have one thing vibrating, I think it just has to be an amplitude, like a string amplitude. That's what establishes the first cycle, is when it like bounces back. It has to be like an oscillation would be like the first cyclical thing, I think. But just again, if I can't have any intuition, I just move on. Scheme, theme, and scene. Right? That EME, mathematics is theme. Proven that, I mean, hilariously, a long time ago. Still a massive result, like huge, tremendous. But those three words always jump out at me as the same kind of thing. Scheme, theme, scene. Sensorality is appropriate. Sensorality appropriates. Appropriation distributes. Completed was. And so, some hodgepodge theorems for you. But that is the big, again, pretty much I think we've gone through all of what physical stability could be. But yeah, it's obviously apparent. Like look at your body. What are you? Why don't you conduct electricity? But you do. Your brain does. And that's why you have myelin sheaths. But all of your particles are made of charge or have charge within them, and so that charge just balances out in a dynamic. That's why you're not conducting electricity throughout the majority of your body. But obviously my rights continue to be violated. It is profound and extensive torture. I've clearly derived so much shit. There's so much intellectual, there's just property, right? Not our inherent charge property, but Brad's property where it gets money. Please pay me some money. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.